Yo, good morning. Welcome to the Stokastic.com NFL Showdown Strategy Show. Yeah, Monday morning, coming off the weekend. We got a crazy slate of games ahead of us, too. You got Monday tonight, you got Thursday night football, you got 2 on Saturday, 9 on Sunday, plus a showdown slate. You got 3 on Christmas Day. So a lot of football. We've got, 5 days of football in the coming week? A lot to look forward to, man. Buckle up, fellas. Happy to be here with you, joined by, as always, Matt Gajewski on Twitter at Matt_Gajewski. And dude, we now have a game, 45-point total. Eagles 3.5-point favorites, depending on where you're looking. Line hasn't really moved much, where Jalen Hurts' illness progressed worse Saturday night into Sunday. He's a legitimate questionable, traveled separately from the team as to not get them sick. And Geno Smith now, according to some reports, facing an uphill battle to play tonight, which could lead to a Drew Lock experience. How are we going to do this today, man?
Yeah, we're going to break it down best we can. And then you, the people, are going to watch live before lock, where they'll have all of the updated information and you can make the best decisions possible. But we'll work with what we have. And as usual, we'll try to break it down from both ways if Geno Smith is in or out, and same thing with Hurts.
Yeah, well, we'll do our best. The good thing is that we can play the scenarios game, right? I mean, we can play if Hurts is in or out. But dude, I was thinking about this. How crazy would it be though, if both of these guys are out, which means that you now have a $6,000 quarterback in Marcus Mariota because the salaries were out already. They didn't preemptively price him up. We had no word. They didn't put Hurts on the injury report until Sunday, and then a $9,200 Drew Lock. Those would be the prices of your two quarterbacks today if Geno and Hurts are out.
Yeah, they would just be smash plays, jam them. There's not really too much to say about it. Neither of them are very good. I'd say they're both serviceable backups, probably like mid-range backups. That's a price thing. You have a player touching the ball every single play who's $6,000, when normally even the bad quarterbacks, they're like 9 to 10,000. So just severely discounted. But I think we're going to get Hurts playing. I would be shocked if he doesn't. Seattle's a little more dicey, but I mean, you can just use your context clues. We have a 45 total. This total would probably be at like 40 points if it was Mariota versus Drew Lock. So, I mean, if you think they miss, go bet the under right now and take out a loan to do so. But I fully expect Hurts to play.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, what I would expect is Hurts to play. I will say though, Matt, and as you mentioned, still a 45-point total, 3.5-point spread. Let me see. When I did my picks for every game video on the Odd Shopper channel earlier in the week, Eagles were -3.5, but the total was 47.5. So the total I certainly wouldn't say it's bottomed out, but it's at 45 now. I think some of that could be baked into like the expectation that Hurts plays, but he's not 100% too, because he's the type of guy that's going to fight to play a game like this, coming off 2 bad losses to San Francisco at home, getting smoked by the Dallas Cowboys. I think it's possible that Hurts plays and he's just not 100% right.
Yeah, that's probably likely, but you putting your doctor cap on. And we're not in Hurts' corner, so we're just guessing. And I honestly think that 2.5 points is Geno. Roughly speaking, quarterbacks are worth about 3. And then you have players like Mahomes who'd be worth closer to, I don't know, 5 or 6. Geno, mid-range quarterback, roughly worth about 3 points. So I think that's largely where the line movement can be explained away. But yeah, I mean, Hurts traveling is a great sign. Him traveling separately is a great sign. This is a huge game. Like Dallas just took an L. Hurts is not missing this game. His effectiveness is a different question.
What's a different question?
His effectiveness.
Yeah, for sure. And you're probably right that Geno has more to do with that than anything else. I will say though, even if Hurts plays, I'm not convinced that he's going to be 100%. But how much does that matter in a spot like this? It's not like you can just pivot to Josh Allen. Pivot. Oh, who cares? Pivot to Dak Prescott, which by the way, how crazy is the NFL right now in terms of just the parity level? You know, the Eagles get smoked by the Cowboys. The Eagles beat the Bills. Then they get smoked by the Cowboys, who then get smoked by the Bills. Who were earlier smoked by the Broncos, right?
That's what I was trying to tell you when you and Mike were both hating on the Eagles last week after they lost to the Cowboys. Like the Eagles could definitely still win the Super Bowl, man.
No. Matt, first of all, I'm a pessimist. I'm never going along with that when it comes to the Eagles.
I
I'll
know.
go along with it with any other team. But it is like you could go down the list. The Bills beat the Cowboys, but the Bills lost to the Broncos. The Broncos then got smoked by the Lions. The Lions coming off a game where they got smoked by the Bears. You know what I mean? It's just it goes. You could just go on and on and on. Week over week, the Titans beat the Dolphins. They just lost at home to Case Keenum and the Texans. Sometimes you just have no idea what to expect. It's crazy.
Yeah, I actually am pretty impressed with half the NFL right now. I think when you, at least the last couple of weeks, when you turn on Red Zone or whatever you're doing for a Sunday, there's like 4 or 5 really good games during those windows. Even the afternoon window, you usually get like a couple of really good games and then maybe one that's bad. It's like 6 to 8 teams are totally dead and can barely even put up capable offenses. But then the top half of the league is so good and there's so much parity between them. When those teams match up, it's must-see TV and it's setting up for an awesome playoff race. And luckily, we can watch Red Zone. So, like Carolina, Atlanta rarely enters my life. I barely have to see those teams on the screen and you just focus on the good games. But yeah, it's kind of the haves and the have-nots. The haves are really good. The have-nots are really, really bad.
No doubt, man. All right, you ready to get into this? Look, these games are tough to break down, but they can be fun. They can be fun. So we're going to do it. And I ask you guys humbly, take a single second, hit that thumbs up, subscribe to the channel. Yesterday, we had no 9 a.m. show. It was the deeper dive, and then it was Matt and Eric on Live Before Live. And somehow, by the grace of God, we hit 1,000 thumbs up thanks to you guys just on the deeper dive without a show prior to that. So I know it can be done. I know you guys can show some love around here, but as I've said, subscribe to the channel. All that stuff goes a long way for us. And remember, all this stuff, anything that has a shelf life outside of a Live Before Lock or whatever, goes into podcast form. Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all of that. And we have some podcast exclusive content that you can only find there, like the one Ben and I do every Tuesday. Guarantee you'll love that podcast for sure. It's like 30 minutes. We get you in and out. It's a good listen, maybe on a short commute or something like that. All right. Let's do it. Steven said, atone for Sam Howell's sins on my best ball team. Hey, I'll tell you what, though. I needed Terry McLaurin yesterday, and when I felt like all was lost, Terry McLaurin and Sam Howell came through, baby. They got it done. Terry almost had that second touchdown, too, which would have been massive. By the way, how are your, not that anyone cares, but I'm interested. How are your best ball lineups looking? I lost, dude. I had Tyreek, I was like way overweight on Tyreek Hill and Tank Dell. So that was a killer. I think I advanced 25 teams out. No, 26 out of 100, which was good. But I think I'm probably only going to advance like 3 of them or something into the third round.
Yeah, I ended up doing 45 or 46. I don't remember the exact number. I advanced 10 of them, 11 of them. And
Wow.
I think 2 are going to get through to the next round.
Pretty good, though. Pretty good.
That's not bad.
Pretty good. Yeah, the Hill and Tank Dell for me is just a killer.
Yeah, had a lot of that. Had a lot of Herbert, Keenan Allen stuff.
Yeah.
It's pretty rough.
Yeah, look, it's not unique to me. There's a lot of guys that didn't play,
No, yeah. Best ball is maybe my favorite thing to do, my least favorite thing to talk about. Because people spend so much time analyzing players when honestly most of it can be boiled down to luck and injuries. And that is, in my opinion, like 95% of it. Your roster construction and who you draft makes a difference. But honestly, if you just follow good rankings and set up some parameters, you're going to be just fine. And then you're just gambling on injuries just like everyone else. What it is, in my opinion, is just an ultimate playoff sweat. Like the sweat this weekend. And if you get any through, it's so good.
Awesome. It's awesome.
So good.
Awesome. It's also my least favorite thing to talk about because when you and I have this discussion, like I said, I was just curious how you did. But when you and I have this discussion, like, it doesn't help anybody. Nobody can gain any knowledge from that. It's not actionable. You know what I mean? Like
There's no accountability. All the people that fail at DFS move over to best ball and talk about their exposures, and it's really, really annoying.
It is. My only thing is every year, I don't care what strategies everyone else says to do. rookie wide receivers, draft them in the latest rounds, because when you hit one, it changes everything. That's all. That's my approach. I know you don't have the same philosophy necessarily, but
I actually agree with you.
yeah. I mean, look, Tank Dell, who cares if he got hurt? That's just a fluke. Jaden Reed, like there's a lot of Sam Laporta, Kraft. All I'm saying is there's a lot of those guys out there. You could be drafting a player that's going to get you 3 fantasy points and you know who he is, or you could draft someone that might just blow up. So that's what makes it fun to me. Anyway, let's talk about it. Philadelphia Eagles, 3.5-point favorites. Let's make it happen. So first things first, Jalen Hurts. The team is healthy outside of him, right? So it's like you have a healthy Goedert, AJ Brown, Devonta Smith, DeAndre Swift. All of these guys are healthy. So we've had showdown slates where Goedert was out. This guy was banged up. Outside of Hurts being questionable, Matt, everybody else is going to be active, which now means let's start here at the top with Jalen Hurts, because he's super expensive. I mean, if he plays, I don't really know how it's not quantifiable for me. I don't know how I can be like, well, I'm playing less of him because he might still be sick.
Right. He's really tricky, and it's still hard to fade him because you have all of the QB sneak stuff. So, I mean, even if Jalen Hurts is somewhat limited, which, I mean, so first of all, if you like Devonta Smith or AJ Brown, you still have to like Hurts to some degree because Hurts is the engine that gets those two players there. Maybe you say they don't run Hurts as much on the ground. I could see that. They kind of haven't been running him as much to begin with, which honestly, I think the bone bruise is still affecting Jalen Hurts. And maybe not so much like pain-wise now, but maybe just a little timidness on the ground. He's sliding very, very early, not taking on contact, which is good. It's a long haul. The Eagles have Super Bowl aspirations. I understand it, but it does hurt him for fantasy. But at the end of the day, like all of that QB sneak stuff, if they get down on the one, it's him. So he still has so much touchdown equity on the ground, still has to do it through the air. It looks like Geno's doubtful, at least on the wrong side of questionable. So that removes an alternative in the expensive price range. So, I mean, I'm not running on a lineup that's playing, 5 guys in the 5K range. So among the studs, Hurts I still think is a pretty good option.
Yeah, I read that he was facing an uphill battle to play. So
yeah,
again, take that for what it's worth. Some of these guys are tough, right? Like not many people expected Trevor Lawrence to play a few weeks ago on not only play, but like he's come out and played on a short week when nobody expected it. So it's definitely possible. And, it's funny because you and I talk about, Super Bowl aspirations for the Eagles. The Seahawks still have playoff aspirations, right? Like they can still get a wild card spot.
Yeah, I mean, they're not a bad team. They've hung with the Cowboys, close at least. Like they've played reasonably good games, and they're a team that has a lot of talent, like DK Metcalf, Lockett. Those are players that can emerge and put up like a game that can beat almost anyone in the NFL. It takes a little bit more. They're definitely not as talented as some other teams, but yeah, a young defense that's pretty strong in the secondary. They're a team that can make plays. I'll say they're like a scary team that I wouldn't necessarily want to face this time of year. But a lot of it hinges on Geno, of course. But to your point, he is tough, and I wouldn't be super surprised to see him play.
We have Hurts projected in right now, as I think we should. It's tough to make these decisions this early in the day, especially when we don't have like any solid news, concrete information. But Hurts has a 34% top play probability on this slate. No one else is north of 19%. That's AJ Brown. Obviously the two of them connected there. Still positive leverage on Hurts. It's just one of these spots where instead of asking, hey, is he a good play? Let's try and dissect what it looks like if we're playing Hurts at the captain spot, right? Because that gives you 6,600 per player. There are some expensive plays on this slate. I mean, AJ Brown is very expensive. DK Metcalf isn't particularly cheap. I mean, Drew Lock could give you some salary relief, but that's just cheap quarterback, not necessarily cheap compared to the rest of the slate. Yeah, Devonta Smith, DeAndre Swift, nobody is that cheap. Tyler Lockett's pretty discounted, sure. What does it look like when you're playing Hurts at captain today? And of course, we can run the Sims on top of this too.
I don't think it's super hard to get other good players in your lineup. especially when there are other studs, but Geno being out, I think kind of hurts. AJ Brown is really the only other piece that's super tricky with Jalen Hurts at the captain. You need to make a pretty severe concession if you're playing both of them and one of them at captain, even if you flip them and you have AJ Brown at captain. But if you play Hurts in that spot, I made lineups that have some combination of Lockett's really underpriced today for a wide receiver 2 at 6,600. That's egregious. Dallas Goedert is very cheap as the pass catcher 3 for this Eagles team. Charbonnet is severely underpriced at 4K for a running back who's basically in a 50-50 timeshare. So the way I look at it is you can pretty comfortably get 2 studs, and then, man, I'm just probably going to live in this mid-range. I don't even think I'm really making concessions by playing lineups that have some combination of Lockett, Goddard, Charbonnet, a kicker, 2 studs. That's a pretty damn good lineup. So I think Hurts lineups are completely fine today. You're not really conceding a lot.
So do I. I have no issues getting the Hurts lineups. Now, is it going to be difficult to go full out Hurts, Brown, Metcalf, Devonta Smith? Of course it is, but you don't have to do that on a slate like today. The thing though is, again, when you and I probably last did a showdown slate with the Eagles, because last game was prime time, but it was Sunday. I think Eagles Buffalo was Sunday. I would assume the last time we did it was it week 11? It was a while ago, right? But the last time we did it, AJ Brown was just soaking up all of the targets. And then Dallas Goedert went out. We saw a lot of that go to Devonta Smith. But with Goddard back, even with him back, Devonta Smith still saw 10 targets last game. AJ Brown in that loss to Dallas was targeted 13 times. I still think AJ Brown is the better play here. But over the course of the season, particularly the last month, I know Goddard's back, by the way, so we can factor that in. You've definitely seen more involvement and bigger games from Devonta Smith, whereas earlier in the year, he was not only the second fiddle to AJ Brown, but he was pretty distant second behind him over the first 8 weeks of the season.
Yeah, I think you laid it out well. I do think there's a gap between them, one that warrants this price difference, but I don't think we've seen the demise of Devonta Smith by any means. This is a very talented player and a guy who's going to pop up for a lot of targets. I honestly kind of paralleled this with a Jamar Chase, T. Higgins situation where I don't ever really want to fade T. Higgins. I would rather play Jamar, all things equal, but Devonta Smith is a very good play. And as far as price adjusting goes, he fits a lot of lineups because I am still going to be playing a lot of Hurts. Getting Hurts and AJ Brown is a little tight. And you do just save enough salary where I do think it's worthwhile to go down to Devonta Smith. But we're splitting hairs here. These are 2 excellent plays. If you gave me just the choice in a vacuum, I would still take AJ Brown between these 2 guys. But Devonta saves you a bunch of salary.
Where are the leverage scores at here today? I mean, they both look pretty similar outside of what? AJ
They're
Brown
both negative, but barely.
Yeah, barely. And AJ Brown's
positive in the flex.
Yes. Yeah, marginally.
Yes, he's negative in the captain, positive in the flex. Same
Devonta
thing,
Smith
honestly, actually with Devonta Smith too. He's the exact same. Positive in the flex, negative in captain.
Yeah, both of them very minimally positive. And look, Brown's getting around 13% captain. Devonta Smith about 8% captain ownership. I'd be curious to see what the Sims spit out on something like this. If it goes heavy defenses or anything like that. Also, you mentioned it, but Dallas Goedert at 6,200. I'm not surprised at all that he has a high leverage score on a game like this at all. I mean, we have him positively leveraged at flex. We have him positively leveraged in the captain spot. Makes a lot of sense to me. Only 2% top play probability, which makes sense on a slate where you've got a lot of these other top tier options, particularly in the passing game, and then Jalen Hurts at quarterback. But still 6.2% optimal captain. When I look at a guy in Dallas Goedert, he's going to have, probably more underwhelming games than he doesn't. But he's also somebody that he's a big body that Hurts looks to once they get into the red zone. He hasn't been as involved, since he came back, only 4 targets. We've seen lesser target shares on the year. But at that price point in a game like this, you could see a big game from Dallas Goedert. I think you mentioned him in the same conversation as Tyler Lockett against the secondary that'll be missing Darius Slay. has Matt Patricia taking over play calling duties from Sean Desai after a pitiful showing over the previous few weeks against good offenses. So yeah, Tyler Lockett and Dallas Goedert. Sorry, I'm moving around a lot here, but those to me feel like the two best values on the slate, given the salaries everywhere else.
Yeah, I think they're very close. I'm going to have a ton of lineups with both of them. Just full-time options. Like generally, this is the wide receiver 3 range. This is like
Right, right.
like we're getting really involved players at this price range. Goddard, he's sort of like Kittle in a way where he plays on an offense with a lot of talent. So sometimes that comes at his expense. You have games where he's going to put up 2-3 fantasy points if he has one catch for like 20 yards. But he also is a member of the Philadelphia Eagles who have an elite offense, and we've seen him put up monster scores. So it's a little bit volatile, but just projection, price adjusted in this offense. Yeah, he's behind Devonta Smith and A.J. Brown, but he's still cheap for the role he's playing. And with some of the volatility, you have tournament winning upside too. So I love Dallas Goedert at this price. He's going to be one of my most owned players. We'll be using him in the captain and the flex, mostly the flex. But to your point, he's at a different salary point than DK Metcalf, AJ Brown, Jalen Hurts. So he offers you a different roster construction too. While he has just it's basically a 2% top play probability, his captain optimal is 6%. So he doesn't need to be the number one raw scorer on the slate to be the optimal captain you need, which is something I think can also be paralleled with players like Tyler Lockett and this range as a whole, Smith and Jigba. It's a really good range and a really good space, I think, to be contrarian if you want to captain one of these guys.
A lot of times on slates like this, where you have a lot of top tier players on both sides that are going to cost you a lot, on a site like DraftKings where you're paying 1.5 times the salary for captain, but getting 1.5 times the fantasy points, being able to jam a lot of those great players into the flex, a good but not amazing number one performance game on the slate from a guy like Goddard or Lockett is enough to get you there. On other slates, like it's possible that you're just going to need the highest score at captain because it's a super low scoring, ugly game. But in a spot like this, if Dallas Goedert gets you one more, elite play, and it's the difference between having to play like a Kenny Gainwell or a DeAndre Swift, then that's all we need to know, right? I mean, that's why his leverage score is so high. That's why, like you said, only 2% top play probability, but 6% optimal, because getting him in there at that price point, only 9,300 a captain, opens things up a lot, man.
Yeah, it absolutely does. This is a range I plan on being significantly overweight to tonight. I was just very surprised that you had all these guys so cheap.
Yeah. Austin said, I haven't won any Showdown since Dave stopped wearing his caps for these Showdown coverage. Yeah, I've worn a hat for like the last 10 of them, and I just haven't worn one today. Once in a while, I go off script. Matt's not wearing a hat. Matt frequently wears hats.
Yeah,
Anyway.
I had to get up and do some stuff this morning. I usually put on a hat when my hair is not fixed. It's short enough right now where it doesn't really matter, but before it was longer earlier in the year.
How do you fix your hair?
Put a hat over it.
Oh, that's so I wasn't sure if you had like a grooming process.
Well, if it's all messed up from sleeping, I'll throw some water on it, try to straighten it out a little bit. Usually a shower will fix it up just fine, but doing a show at 8 a.m. Central Time, don't always get that in.
But I mean, are you putting product in your hair?
Oh, geez, no.
That's what I thought. That's what I thought. That's what I meant when you said it's not fixed. I was like, he's got a little routine here.
My haircut is a 2 everywhere, and then when it gets a little long, I just get it cut again.
Yeah, fair enough. I can't shave my head. I look like a dummy. What do we do? I do. I have like an egg-shaped head all under this hair. What are we doing with the punts, the cheaper options for Philly? Because we had Nick Sirianni come out a few days ago. He's like, no, we're just like, the plan is to get the ball to Brown, to Swift, to Smith, and to Goddard. He's like, that's our plan. And look, I don't really blame him for saying that. I don't think, working Julio Jones or Olamide Zaccheaus into the game plan more is going to, strongly benefit them. Now, Zaccheaus did have a showdown slate where if you had him, you won, assuming you got the other pieces right. But I guess what I'm getting at here, Matt, and it's not to say you can't play him because he has been targeted in the end zone a few times this season, is that once you get down to these cheaper options, it's not like a team that only has a number one top option and then just kind of a bunch of other guys. The Eagles have a number one, and then they have a clear number two, and then they have a clear number three in Goedert, and they still have Swift in the backfield. And they have a rushing quarterback in Jalen Hurts.
Yeah, so you mentioned it's already thin with these guys. The Quez Watkins, Olamide Zaccheaus, and Julio Jones. With the pricing on this slate, Goedert being so affordable, Lockett, Charbonnet, I don't see a lot of merit to playing these guys, but if you were just playing large field tournaments, you're running a portfolio in a 150 set, I would rank them. I think Quez 1, Olamide 2, Julio 3. None of them are going to have a full-time role. They honestly all kind of have like different specific roles that they play. Quez is a burner. He'll be used downfield. Julio tries to do the same thing. He's just not very good at it anymore. And Olamide works a little bit underneath as like a slot receiver rather than stretching the field. So they all do play like specific roles. Quez, I think, has the biggest playability, which is why he would be the guy I gravitate towards. Olamide, I think, is safer, but he almost, in my mind, operates like a Wan'Dale Robinson, where you're a lot of times getting one or two catches underneath, minimal yards, and probably not a score. And Julio, I don't even really know why they signed him at this point. He just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But yeah, I don't think you need these guys.
Yeah, you probably don't.
Why did they sign Julio?
Well, because at one point Quez Watkins was on the IR. My guess is because that's the only reason, in my opinion, is Watkins was on the IR.
That's fair. Have a competent guy come in and fill in for some snaps.
Yeah, just like
he's a veteran. Yeah.
Somebody, yeah. Because Quez is a burner, or you just use him on like screens, but you can use Smith for a lot of that stuff. So I think they just kind of used Julio in the end zone a couple of times. And yeah, it's
I want to see Britton Covey.
My father-in-law loves that guy. He calls him the kamikaze because on punt
returns, that's the perfect nickname. He does not give a shit. He's running into whatever as fast as he can. His CTE is going to be so bad and he barely plays.
So bad. But on punt returns, like, I don't think I've ever seen him wave off a fair catch. I don't think I've ever seen him fair catch a ball.
Oh, no. Britton Covey, no.
He is. He's the kamikaze, dude. He's just like looking for death.
He's insane. I love that guy.
And he doesn't fumble either. He gets crumpled by like three guys and just gets back up and jogs off the field.
Well, by the way, it's truly insane.
Did you see the punter for, was it the Commanders? Did you see any red zone on the 4 o'clock?
Yes, I know what you're talking about. Yes.
Like, look, man, I know the punters aren't the toughest breed. He barely got touched. And you would have thought he just got eaten, half of his body eaten by a shark. Like, dude, he was rolling just on the ground in agony. And they play the replay. And even the broadcaster's like, yeah, I didn't really see much there.
Yeah, I thought that was a bit egregious too. I don't know if he was acting, trying to get a call, but that was the opposite of Britton Covey.
He was writhing in pain and they took him back to the locker room. I don't know. I guess all I'm saying though, to wrap up the Eagles here, and by the way, Jake Elliott's always viable. Just always. The guy will drill him from anywhere. He's fantastic. And the Eagles have had a tough time punching the ball in the end zone anyway, against less than terrible or better than terrible defenses. But like, you look at these last games, Devonta Smith, 95% of snaps. A.J. Brown, 93% of snaps. By the way, they got smoked in this game, so they still played nearly the entire game. Dallas Goedert, 84% of snaps. Then it's 27% Zaccheaus. It's 47% Watkins, but he's just running sprints for the most part. Julio Jones, 24%. Britton Covey played two snaps on offense. And then everybody else at the tight end position are just blockers. So, like, they don't even have a wide receiver 3 that's out there for most of the game.
Yeah, exactly. And then just paralleled with the cheap Lockett, Goedert, all that stuff. Unless you're playing large field stuff, I don't really know why you need to do this.
What do you make of the running back position?
Dude, I don't know. So you look at the Dallas game. Gainwell played a lot. That game was also out of hand pretty early on, which I think influenced a lot of the Gainwell snaps. And I think if this game plays to the spread, it probably is back more to Swift. But it's tough because it's not like Gainwell's going to be completely uninvolved. So I'm kind of just trying to parse the game scripts we've seen out of Philadelphia, project what we have moving forward here, and then try to make an educated guess if these guys are over projected or under projected. I tend to think we have Swift slightly under projected, but at the same time, he's negatively leveraged. And even with a slight bump, would that put him in the positives? Probably not, just because of all the players we have that are cheap in that mid range. So I still think I'm probably not going to get a lot of Swift, but I am going to make it at least a slight priority to get more than at least what we're projecting now. And the other thing is, I think if you do believe Hurts is limited at any capacity, the main beneficiaries probably are the running backs. A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, they're still reliant on a healthy Hurts. If Hurts is playing ineffective, that's going to hurt them. But one thing you can do is just increase your run rate, try to develop maybe screens and stuff for DeAndre Swift and Gainwell. So this is a really tricky position. I think probably the trickiest on the slate. Really wrestling with it. But one thing I can say is I definitely want some exposure to Swift. I don't want to be underexposed severely in this spot.
I like him a lot today. Because the Eagles, I mean, it's up until this point haven't learned from their mistakes. But now their feet are getting held to the fire. And I'm pretty serious about that. Mike's producing the show. He's a local. He understands. I mean, they changed defensive core. They changed play callers, and Matt Patricia's going to be calling the defense. On offense, you're talking about a scenario where they've gotten away from the run game. What happened yesterday? The Bills just committed 100% to the ground game against Dallas, and they shit on them. Now, again, like Dallas away from home. I mentioned to Ben yesterday, I think the Bills come out and they win this game. It was a game that felt like the Bills should win because they're a good team that's kind of been snake bit all year long, right? The Eagles would be really smart to try to run the ball early and often. And they always say, like, I forget if it was Brian Johnson or Nick Sirianni that was like, no, our game plan is to get out early, get out to an early lead. Well, that hasn't worked. You've gone into halftime losing in like 6 straight games. They were down against Dallas, down against San Fran, down against Buffalo, down against Kansas City, down against Dallas, down against Washington in halftime. All of these games, maybe even Miami, I can't remember. Matt, you can't keep doing that. And I think now it's gotten to a point after 2 embarrassingly bad losses, one of which came at home, that you could try to play this game for the Eagles to run the ball a lot early on. And if that's the case, and you mentioned if Jalen Hurts isn't at 100%, which is entirely possible, I say it's likely that he's not at 100%. I would say it's likely. I think DeAndre Swift could benefit in a big, big way today.
Yeah, I think he could too. And to your point, I think it all comes down to how healthy you think Hurts is. I agree with you. I don't think he's close to 100%. I do think he plays. What capacity, I think, is a question. That's one thing I don't understand either, like not committing to the run game, especially if it's working. Like NFL teams, just teams in general, script your first like 10, 15 plays, which is generally to gain information from the defense and make adjustments. If you're not doing that, and if teams are giving you the run and you're just not taking it, like I don't know what you're doing and why you have to make all these changes on offense. So I don't know. Their feet are being held to the fire. Hopefully they figure it out. And maybe Jalen Hurts being limited is a catalyst that forces them to run the ball more. It's not like they've been ineffective running the ball, which is another thing I don't understand. Swift has been pretty damn good this year, efficiency-wise. I honestly think they're giving too many snaps to Gainwell and Boston Scott. What do you think about that?
What do you think I think about that?
I think you agree with me, but I just wanted to be sure.
Oh, bro, dude, I can't handle Kenny Gainwell getting like high leverage opportunities. Do I think he's terrible? No, but he's clearly a back. Like he's a below average backup running back, and he doesn't do anything special. DeAndre Swift's averaging over 4.5 yards per attempt this year. Like he's been good,
I don't. Yeah, he's awesome, and I don't understand why they force Gainwell into hurry up in 2 minute stuff. Coming out of college, Swift was supposed to be this like passing back by trade. Like that was supposed to be a strength. People compared, coming out of school this year, people were comparing Jahmyr Gibbs to DeAndre Swift. It's funny that they ended up in both of the lines before the Eagles made the trade, of course. But I mean, like I just don't understand why on third downs, hurry ups, like gotta get Gainwell in. Like why is that the mentality?
Right. Why is the mentality? Yeah, we have to get him in the game. Makes no sense at all. He's a
Yeah, I don't
fourth.
know.
It's not like they spent a lot of draft capital on him. It's not, you know what I mean? It's not like you paid a lot of money for him, like Carolina trying to force Miles Sanders as much as they could early in the year before they finally gave up. I don't know. I think we've covered most of Philly. Anything else you want to get to here? Oh, you know what? How about this? Let's summarize the Eagles before we move over to Seattle, since there's a lot of big pieces and moving parts here. We agreed, by the way, if Mariota plays, you just have to jam him at that price, especially given that he's a mobile quarterback.
Absolutely. For small field stuff, I think you're looking firmly at one of Hurts or AJ Brown and the captain. As your field size gets wider, that's where I think you can start considering other players like Devonta Smith and Dallas Goedert and DeAndre Swift. And I think it's pretty easy to still jam an AJ Brown or a Jalen Hurts at captain because we have this robust mid-range today. I don't think you need to make as many concessions. But one strategy I will be using in large field specifically is captaining some of those mid-price guys. A lot of them are positively leveraged in the captain, even though they're not projected to be the number one overall score. It just offers you a different roster construction. So to sum it all up well, cash games, low risk, AJ Brown, Hurts, captain, fill out your roster with mid-range. Larger field, I'll be playing around a little bit more with the mid-range at captain.
Yeah, I'm with you. I like that. And I don't mind having a little Swift at captain either, Rance, seeing that comment in chat. It doesn't
Agreed.
bother me. You wanted to get to Gainwell, whatever, but the problem is Gainwell's not that cheap. You and I talk about this all the time where it's like, sure, maybe they break one, but that's what you're going to need. Gainwell's not 2,000. He's not 1,500. He's 4,400, Matt.
I think Gainwell had the perfect game script last week against Dallas. They get down early in that game. They view him as the best pass catching back for some reason, unbeknownst to us, and he finished with 4 touches. Like that was the best run out Gainwell could have got, and he had 4 touches.
Absolutely right. By the way, do you remember the Showdown slate where Marcus Mariota came in as the backup and somebody won someone solo shipped like 500K? Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Who was the starter at that point?
I don't remember. I do remember the backup quarterback because there was huge Twitter discourse after that.
Yeah, and then people have tried to do it ever since.
Yeah, I'm never doing that.
I think it was his first year on the Raiders.
Yeah, I think.
Go ahead.
No, I think you're right. And Chat's agreeing. Chat is saying it was the Raiders.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it was the Raiders. Must have been. Here's the game. Here's the game. Passing touchdown, rushing touchdown, 88 rushing yards against the Chargers, 226 passing yards. Solo shipped it on FanDuel. Ridiculous, man. That was like 3 or 4 years ago now. All right. Let's talk about the Seattle Seahawks. Why don't we? Before we do, though, Underdog free square for new users today, Matt. Hey, free square. It is DeAndre Swift over. Oh, how about that? Half a total yard for DeAndre Swift, which means you sign up. We have a link in the description and in chat. If you're not at Underdog yet, you're nuts. The site's fantastic. They have like 80 different formats that you can play. Best ball, daily drafts, playoff best ball, $1.5 million prize pool. Matt and I will be diving deep into that very shortly. The Pick'em contest, particularly if you're in a non-legal betting state, you can up to 20x your entry. That's what this free square is for. A million different formats, a ton, and so much money to be made. So much money in these prize pools every week, every day. Link in the description and in chat. Be sure to use that because you'll get $100 first match deposit bonus, 100%. So if you have $100 you put in, now you have 200. If you only have 20, well, guess what? Now you have $40. You're doubling your bankroll out of the gate. And Matt, the best part, you go into these pick'em contests, you're just taking higher or lower on all of these player projections, be it passing yards, rushing yards, receiving yards, attempts, whatever. Now you go into it and you go, all right, I already have a win in DeAndre Swift over a half a yard if you're a new user.
Yeah, I mean, these are the biggest, essentially like the biggest no-brainers in all of like sports betting, pick 'em contests, you're getting a free prop. I mean, it literally is as simple as it sounds. Pair that with whatever your other favorite prop is and just profit more frequently. And it's so easy. Like you need to be taking advantage of these anytime they're available.
If you haven't done so, again, Underdog, free square on DeAndre Swift today. Get in those playoff best ball drafts too. I guarantee you'll love. Look, we say talking about best ball is boring. You're right. Talking about drafting in best ball is less boring. Once the season starts, then it's just boring, right? Like nobody cares what your advance rate is. Nobody cares what you're doing, how many teams are in first place, if you're above advance rate expectations in week 10. But drafting is the best part of all of it. So dive in, get your 100% first match deposit bonus if you're not on Underdog yet. Take that free square to the bank today. And maybe Matt and I'll see you in some of those drafts come week 17 or 18. All right. Link in the description and in chat to get that bonus and the free square. Seattle Seahawks. By the way, how comfortable are you with defenses today?
Reasonably comfortable. I have a little less interest than normal. And you guys know this if you've been watching the show for any length of time. Defenses have been bearing me with the low scoring, especially early in the season. It's gotten a little better recently. But yeah, not as much interest, largely because the mid-range is so robust.
Let's talk about the top here. Geno Smith or Drew Lock. Look, if there's one thing you and I both know well about Drew Lock is that if you put him back there, the guy is going to throw deep. All right. That's it. Like we know that he's going to take every opportunity he can to just chuck the ball. On the season, he is attempting 19% of his passes on his 15 or 43 attempts. 19% of them, Matt, have been 20 plus yards downfield. Now, that isn't to say that Geno doesn't attempt deep balls, 14%. Drew Lock's at almost 20% deep balls. It's not unique to Seattle, though. He did the same thing in Denver. The problem is, how often is he going to connect on them? Well, that's a conversation for another time. 1 touchdown, 3 interceptions on 8 deep attempts. Not great, but you know he's going to chuck it. You know he's going to air it out. So that's just something to keep in the back of your mind today, knowing that Darius Slay is inactive as well if Drew Lock starts.
I kind of like Drew Lock. He's not going to project that well, I don't think, because you do see some efficiency stuff from Geno. The price difference is only 200. So it's not like we have a Marcus Mariota price tag or something on Drew Lock. He's still expensive. But he plays like the YOLO ball that Jameis Winston does, which is honestly just fine for DFS and fantasy. Like even last week against San Francisco, this team loses. It's actually closer than it should have been. But Drew Lock finishes with 269 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks. I mean, 2 picks aren't great. Not the best box score from a real life perspective, but from fantasy, I'll take 270 and 2 from Drew Lock. Couple rushing yards here and there. And what I like about him as a passer is a lot of times he has the deep balls attempts. It's great. It's good for big plays. But even when he's throwing screens, stuff underneath, he has receivers that can win on their own. Like DK Metcalf, sometimes you just put the ball on DK Metcalf. He's going to do his thing and he's going to get extra yards for you. Lockett is not as good at that at this point in his career. Smith and Jigba excels at that. So you've got 3 excellent wide receivers. Both your running backs are healthy. The offensive line is a little better than it was earlier in the year because of health. So as long as Drew Lock doesn't completely faceplant, there's a lot of paths for him to have success. I actually like him a decent amount today.
I like him a lot too. I truly do, because look, what else can we ask for? He's reasonably priced. He's going to throw deep, and as you pointed out, there are guys that can excel after the catch as well. He has the weapons. When he was in Denver, he didn't really have notable enough weapons. Like, sure, he had Cortland Sutton for what, a year?
And he had a torn ACL one of those years.
Exactly. Right, exactly. So he didn't really have much to work with, particularly if you had like a healthy Cortland Sutton, I think that's different. But still, DK Metcalf is a freak of nature. And then you have Tyler Lockett as well, who, as you said, not the same as he once was. I like all of these guys today. I know the play calling defensively is going to be different for Philadelphia. maybe they're not sitting back 48 yards off the receivers on 3rd and 8, but maybe they make some adjustments here. Are you worried about the rain in this game at all? I'm wondering if that's a reason that the total has come down too.
I wanted to monitor this throughout the day. Right now, I'm not super worried, but it's kind of on that fringe where I think it's something we at least need to keep our fingers on the pulse of.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not 100% out on this yet, but I'm just going to keep my eye on it throughout the day. Right now, I'm not going to play it anything different if it kicked off with the current weather projections.
It's not going to be windy, but there is going to be heavy rain. But we also saw heavy rain between Philly and Buffalo, and the game ended up having like 67 points or something. So,
yeah,
68 points, whatever. That stuff happens for sure. I mean, sure, you can look at Carolina and Atlanta, but those are just two pitiful teams.
That was rain aside. That game was going to be 7-6 or whatever it ended up being.
Yeah, that could have been in a dome, and it's a 9-7 game or whatever it was. But yeah, look, Drew Lock, it's never going to feel good, but he's going to chuck it. So I have no issues with truly with any of these guys today. And I'll say this, Matt, it doesn't matter if Gino or Drew Lock is in. I'm honestly taking the same approach with the pass catchers and the quarterbacks.
Same. I think you sacrifice efficiency, but you get more like big plays and more volatile games from Lock, which honestly, like at times this could be better than what Gino does because Gino's so conservative, which is great for an offense. He doesn't really turn the ball over. But yeah, I'm not treating Metcalf and Lockett any differently. And honestly, just like it's a pricing error on Lockett. Even if we had, I don't know, put Zach Wilson out there with this receiving core, Lockett still would be too cheap. He's extremely valuable on this slate, given his target share, which still isn't separating from DK Metcalf really vastly. I mean, yeah, Lockett and Smith and Jigba, for that matter, he's been very involved of late. So to me, it's just you have so many options that are cheap in Lockett and Smith and Jigba. Metcalf, the stud at the top. Maybe he's a little overpriced, but I'm still not Xing him out by any means. It's just the pricing is so favorable. I don't know how you can fade these guys even with Lock.
Also, just throwing this out there, I have no problems with Eagles defense and Drew Lock lineups either.
Agreed.
He could get picked off 3 times and still have 20 plus fantasy points. It's just the way he plays. So we'll see. What are you doing with the backfield here? This is another kind of tough one. Like we said at receiver, Lockett, Metcalf, JSN, those guys are going to get like all of the opportunities. Maybe Jake Bobo gets a target or two, but I mean, we know it's going there. At tight end, yeah, Fant, Parkinson, Disley, they're all going to get snaps. Feel free to break that down, Matt. I know you love breaking down these tenuous tight end positions, but the running back spot between Walker and Charbonnet at this point, I think it definitely becomes tougher to figure out who's carving out the top role, who's staying atop, especially dependent on the game script as well.
To me, it's like a damn near 50-50 in the backfield. Yeah. One thing I didn't expect was Kenneth Walker to run 22 routes to Charbonnet's 12. Charbonnet's an excellent pass catcher. All throughout college, he excelled in that arena, and Walker was actually the opposite. Now, it's not that he can't do it. He just wasn't really asked. So just a lot of people coming into the year viewed Walker as more your early down back, Charbonnet as your third down back, change of pace on early downs. It's not really what they've done recently. But with all of that said, you still have basically a 50-50 on early downs between Charbonnet and Walker, maybe 60-40 in favor of Walker. But that makes Charbonnet too cheap at his price tag. He's going to play a lot. He had 25 snaps last game. Walker at 33. You can see he's very close there. That was a competitive game against San Francisco, so not really a blowout situation. Walker's going to play a lot, but so is Charbonnet. So I would honestly just rather save the salary. If you're paying for studs, get Metcalf, get Hurts, get A.J. Brown, and then play the cheaper back in Charbonnet, in my opinion.
It is a big price gap, huh? I mean, it's
huge.
Almost,
and their roles aren't that different.
Right. He's almost twice as expensive as Charbonnet. Yeah, you're right. Well, let me ask you this, though. Do you like Kenneth Walker, or is this a spot where you don't even really like Walker that much, but you like Charbonnet?
I think Walker's fine. I love him as a player. It's just the price tag on him. So it's tough to take his opportunity that you project, mirror it with the price tag, and then view him as a very strong play, especially because he's not going to be unowned.
And for what it's worth, our tools would suggest the same. That we're going to show the Sims tool in a moment too, see what the results are. Then Matt and I will build a lineup. But our tools are showing Charbonnet with 3% positive leverage. Meanwhile, Walker has the lowest leverage score on the slate, Matt, among any of these players.
I'm not entirely surprised by that. And of course, just because we have him as the most negatively leveraged player doesn't mean you can't build good lineups with him. You can, especially if you love him. Doesn't mean he can't have a good game. He absolutely can. What our tools tell you is that he's a little bit overpriced and overowned, and he's a little less likely to have a big game compared to some other guys in this range. So if you still have a take on Kenneth Walker and you want to build a lineup with him, or another thing is you just might want to be diversified. You say DK Metcalf gets hurt or something, you don't want to be way overexposed. You want to just spread it out a little bit. The Sims tool, if you plug Kenneth Walker, is still going to give you the positive EV Kenneth Walker lineups. They're just going to be a little harder to build.
That's a good way to look at it. Yeah, you're right. And, you know, a little less chance of being optimal given his ownership, a little bit overpriced. Right. And it's funny because Walker earlier in the year, this price would have been a smash on him at 7,800. It's just things change. Hey, you got the bowl promo going still, right? We still got the bowl promo going for all college football bowl games, college basketball projections, all of that stuff still in action. Yeah.
Yeah. And I believe that goes through the 21st. It does. I just double checked. And man, so college football, there's a matinee game today. It's at 2:30 Eastern time. And then we basically only have 2 days off through the college football playoff. So it's not like, all right, you're getting a Saturday game and that's it. We've got games Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and then all the next week, there's a ton of games. So you're getting a ton of days, a ton of ways to take advantage of this. And then hoops is involved too. College hoops is every day. So there's just so many slates that you can take advantage of. And I mean, you want to get a look even at players that you might be considering next year in best ball in the NFL. This is a great way to do so. And one that you can take advantage of right now for a very, very cheap price.
Yeah, 50% off, all of it. So that's like 50% off a package that goes for the next how long?
30 days.
Yeah, right.
And dude, I mean, there's so many slates. It's way underpriced.
Check it out. Link in the description and chat. Guys, if you're in, first, I don't know why you wouldn't be. It sucks. In PA, I can't, dude, I used to love college football and college basketball, DFS. I'm not allowed to play it in PA anymore.
That's so the biggest hindrance. Yeah, I understand a lot of you won't be able to take advantage of this because of state legislation, but if you can, it's fun, man.
Yeah, it sucks.
Why did your state do that? That sucks.
I know. I can bet on college sports, but I can't bet on college props. I used to be able to play college football DFS was literally my favorite sport to play. It was my favorite sport to play. I loved it. This is back when you had to play a tight end.
Yeah, way back in the day.
Remember
before
that?
They took it away and brought it back.
Yep. And I can't play second half DFS contests, but I can do everything. It's so weird in PA. But if you're in one of those states, 50% off all of it, guys. You won't find someone that is more knowledgeable, that puts more time into this than Matt. I guarantee it. You could look anywhere else for these tools. You won't find them better anywhere than here with his tools, with his data, with his projections, ownership. I can guarantee it. It's not going to happen. So link down there in the description, 50% off if you use that link. Also, Matt, I want to run the Sims here unless there was anything else you want to talk about Seattle, because I got something fun to talk about.
No, there's not really much more for me to add. We talked about the wide receivers. Bobo is very, very thin. Fant is, I think, the best tight end play, but still, it's basically the same thing as Quez Watkins, Julio Jones, and them. With a robust mid-range, I don't think you need to do it unless you're playing real big tournaments.
All right, so a lot of questions in chat about the Sims. LL Quang said, so to understand the simulated player ROI category, the more negative the number is, the worse the play is. Yeah, but it doesn't mean you're not going to get, like with the simulated player ROI, it certainly doesn't mean you're not going to get a lot of them. We can pull that up now. I will say though, if you guys have been on the fence about trying out the Sims tool or the lineup generator, this is the week to do it. Okay. We're going to get into it now. We're going to build a lineup. We're going to look at our exposure. So if you're not interested in doing any of that, no big deal. But if you are, you have Monday Night Football, Matt, check this out. You have Thursday night football. You have Saturday football, 2 games. You have 9 games on Sunday main slate plus a showdown slate. And you have 3 games on Christmas Day, all of which will have a main slate, an afternoon, and a showdown slate. So if there was ever a time where you're like, I want to try this, but I don't want to do it when there's only football on 3 days, you're going to have like double-digit slates, everything for the Sims tool and for the showdown and for the lineup generator. Links down there in the description. That's the best time to do it, is when you literally have football on 5 days of the week starting today.
Yeah, man, I fully believe in our tools. I think you should sign up regardless, but I also want to be a man of the people. And if you're trying them out for the first time, try it out when you get the most bang for your buck. You get the most opportunities to play it out, get familiar with it, decide if you like it. I think it's just common sense. And luckily, we have one of those weeks coming up. So yeah, play it out, get the most for your money.
I can't wait. I cannot wait for the ton of football. Then next week and the week after that, it's all basically on the same day. Anyway, yeah, Mike, before we get to the NBA strategy show, let's take a look at these Sims. First thing I want to do is just pull up lineups real quick and see what we're getting at. I want to see what exposures look like for captain. Matt, do you have any guesses? I always like picking your brain, seeing if you have any guesses to see what our highest exposed captains look like today.
I still think it's going to be Hurts.
Okay. Ah, man. All right. Top 3 Simmed ROI lineups. So we ran the contest generator, run the Sims. Jalen Hurts, Jalen Hurts, Jalen Hurts, Jalen Hurts in the top 4 with AJ Brown. Wow. Devonta Smith, Noah Fant, Seahawks, Tyler Lockett. That's not a bad lineup at all.
No, it sounds really good.
How about this one? Hurts, Goedert, Geno. Again, this is assuming Geno and Hurts play, but this still gives us a good idea.
And honestly, like the one you read out, throw in Lock 1 for 1, and I still probably would like it. They're at the same price.
100%. Hurts, Goedert, Geno, Walker. So even there you go. We do have Walker negatively leveraged, but still is going to pop up in some lineups that work. Noah Fant, Tyler Lockett, Hurts, AJ Brown, Goedert, Walker, Seattle, Charbonnet. Those are the ones that feel gross, but then win tournaments because nobody's doing it, like a Walker Charbonnet lineup.
Yeah, I have no problem with that. For big tournaments, yes.
For big tournaments. Go to exposures, Mike, and when you go to position, just go to exposures and go to position and just hit that down to see where captain is. You don't have to filter it. Just hit the arrow, or you could do that too. That's fine. All right, so it doesn't matter, either one. Captain, you're right. Hurts, Geno, which will undoubtedly turn into. Do you think Mariota will just be jammed at captain if we do this? If Hurts was out?
I honestly think it might be a lot of Mariota flex with like AJ Brown captain. Because it's still a pretty loose slate. I don't think he's going to project better than like AJ Brown.
True.
So I don't know. I think we'd get a lot of him, but maybe not as much as we think.
Let's build a lineup, dude.
All right.
I'll go first here. I believe you went first last week. You know what I'll do? I'll go with one of our most positively leveraged spots and go. I'm going to go Tyler Lockett captain. Let's see what happens.
Love it. I'll throw in Hurts. I think we can still use him in the flex confidently.
All right. So we got Lockett at captain, Jalen Hurts at the flex. How about this? Let's play this lineup assuming Drew Lock is active. I'm going to go Drew Lock.
Love Drew Lock. I'm going to stick in the mid-range and throw in Goedert.
All right, so here's the tough part. This is probably going to have to be a swift fade game because we have Hurts. You do have Goedert.
Dude, put him in so we can get something good if you put him in.
You want to do it? So fade AJ Brown and Devonta Smith, go Goedert, Swift, and Hurts.
This is mid to large field, correct?
Yeah, if this is large field, it makes sense.
Yeah, but to your point, I would put in Devonta Smith or AJ Brown if it was smaller field.
You have 5,300 remaining.
So your 2v2, if you do like Swift, I think you're probably playing one of the kickers. And then if you play Devonta Smith, you get in Zach Charbonnet. It fits perfectly.
It does. It does, yeah. Smith and Zach Charbonnet gives you $300. This would be smaller field because my guess is this would be a relatively popular lineup. But you're right. You said it at the top of the show. It's easy to build good lineups.
Really easy. I like this slate a lot.
Appreciate you guys hanging out. Hey, follow Matt at Matt_Gajewski on Twitter. Me at Laffy_D, LOUGHY_D. You ever have any questions about our tools, about any of this stuff, promos, whatever, anything? My DMs are open. Happy to help you out. Shout out to Mike for producing this one. NBA strategy show coming up right now. We'll catch you back here tonight, 7 o'clock, 7:15 Eastern. Monday Night Football live before lock. Peace.